Without further ado, page 16, the first paper is a submission on the principles of Treaty of Waitangi Bill. Who is going to speak to that? And then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. Jean.
Tēnā tātou, tēnā hoki koe, Your Worship, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, as we're aware, the current government certainly making moves in regards to the position of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, central government's principles-based approach, and the way that they do their mahi. But certainly, I think from a regional perspective, and like many examples where the current suite of central government reforms, I guess, stand to challenge or remove the ability for local decision-making tables of governors like yourselves around the country to be able to, based on their constituent views, decide what's best for their region. And I think that the Treaty Principles Bill is certainly another one of those examples, specifically for us in Te Tairawhiti, given our 56% Māori population in region, and probably the most obvious fact why I feel that this should be challenged from a Gisborne District Council perspective is because they've undertaken this journey without the partner in the room. Now, if we reflect on our local context and in kaupapa of shared, I guess, importance and priority between Gisborne District Council and our iwi partners or tangata whenua in the region, we know full well that it's integral, that any large decisions that are made or any kaupapa that impact on our treaty partnership outcomes or tangata whenua specifically, if we have those conversations in isolation, we understand and we know full well what often the results can be. And the fact that partners or tangata whenua have not been involved in this discussion, for me, warrants an objection from Gisborne District Council at this stage. I'm not saying that we shouldn't support a discussion on the relevance of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the way it's currently administered via central government, local government, a discussion around principles, but I feel that that discussion needs to be had in the appropriate way. As of 2022, Council, when I say Council, I mean that your table of elected members adopted a strategic position on our approach to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and giving effect to that relationship with tangata whenua in the region. And I think that this submission just really highlights the reality of our region and what we have to navigate at a local decision-making level. And I think that, and based on a lot of discussions that have been had around this table by yourselves as elected members, is that there's a strong want to maintain the decisions for local matters in a local context. And so I'll just take that report as read and welcome any questions. Kia ora tātou.
Madam CEO, and Jean, through your worship, just to add to the context of the report also, as a Te Uru Kahika Regional and Unitary Council sector, the majority of those councils have endorsed collective positioning of statement to abandon, recommendation to government to abandon the Treaty Principles Bill, and that has also been discussed at the Te Uru Kahika's last meeting, where they were looking at the rationale firstly for submitting, and Jean's covered that part of that. The other is the operational impacts that that has, the strain that it puts on our existing relationships in region, and also those iwi that have not yet to settle, which we have in our region as well. So there are some constitutional, procedural, partnership aspects, but also practically for local government there are some operational aspects, and I'm happy to go into some detail of that for you as well. But notwithstanding that, of all councils in New Zealand, given our demographic and our relationships and our policy context setting, it is consistent with the strategy as Jean has outlined for this council to be considering to submit a submission on the bill.
Councillor Wharehinga Ria, did someone put their hand up? Grandstand.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm going to make this really easy. I'm happy to move the support for us to make a submission as outlined from pages 30 to 32. The recommendations is for us to delegate to the Chief Executive to make any amendments to our draft submission and also delegate the authority to our CE and to our Mayor to submit the submission to the Justice Committee. If I take us to page 32, because that's the substance of what we're talking about right now, okay? It's those words that our council staff have put together, which is the substance of our submission moving forward, all right? And it's very, very reasonable. Te Tiriti is one of our foundational, if not the most foundational and constitutional document for the creation of our country as it stands right now. The definitions and the principles about Te Tiriti have been worked out through decades, over centuries, more than a century, between Te Iwi Māori and the Crown in order to be able to define those definitions and those principles. Those definitions and those principles have then informed legislation and settlements for our iwi. It's that legislation and those settlements that have determined our work as a council in negotiating those things with iwi. We have to submit in opposition to this bill. We have to, otherwise we fundamentally set our council up and our ratepayer up for so much cost in regards to stripping back all of that century's worth of work. None of us in good conscience, as representatives of the ratepayer, do not want to put that on our ratepayer. I mean, there are some things principally, as an individual person, I'm opposed to in regards to this bill. But that's not the thing we're discussing today. We're discussing whether or not our council should make a submission against the Treaty Principles Bill, and it absolutely should, because it's in line with our regional representation. So I 100% support us making a submission against this Treaty Principles Bill outlined in the letter from pages 30 of our agenda to pages 32. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Morena tātou. I want to 100% second the motion moved by Councillor Wharehinga. I know that around the table that I'll possibly hear comments like, it isn't going to pass the first reading, so why bother? We shouldn't take sides, let the government govern. Council role as a regulator, we should only be sorting out roads, bridges, pipelines, rubbish, rates, etc. It's a waste of council resources. We have bigger things to worry about, and it won't affect us either way. These are not uncommon questions and comments. They are conversations that are being brought up at almost every council table across the whole country. So everyone is going to want to bring these whakaaro or thoughts up to the table. So I want to try and address some of those concerns. According to Local Government New Zealand, ultimately local government is designed to make sure the community is heard and represented in the decision-making space and have the ability to influence the future of our community. They go on to say local government is responsible for decisions about local or regional activity to ensure healthy environment, thriving families and businesses, and safe spaces for all, and a culture that supports every individual's sense of belonging. It's about community and ensuring that our whānau and the people in our region are heard and considered when decisions are made, whether that's in a community discussion, a council chamber, or the highest levels of local government. That's Local Government New Zealand. Now, the proposed bill has led the charge in highlighting and empowering again an anti-Māori rhetoric, and it's caused a divide in every single community across the country. Relations with Māori are at an all-time low from a central government perspective. The Prime Minister has been outed as he did not have to take this stance. It was not a deal breaker, so why choose it? Because while the Minister for Local Government and the Prime Minister have told us, local government, that we need to cut back to the essentials, cut costs and focus on the basics, they throw thousands and thousands of dollars away on a non-essential bill that they know worsens relations in our country. As an elected member, I feel a duty of care to our community to make a start in my official capacity as a councillor for Te Kaunihira o Te Tai Rāwhiti. from an official standpoint in this role as a community advocate, that this kind of behaviour and decisions will not be tolerated by the government. The Local Government Act 2002 will be severely impacted by the bill. Section 4 represents our obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to local government decision making. It refers to the principles. With a change in the definition of the principles, it changes the very purposeful treaty obligations, legislation of local government, and many other bits of legislation with the same provisions. This bill is but a stepping stone to changing legislation in this country. Within the Local Government Act, Section 81, contributions to decision-making process by Māori, a local authority, us, must establish and maintain process to provide opportunities for Māori to contribute to decision-making processes of local authority and consider ways in which it may foster the development of Māori capacity to contribute to the process of the local authority. Iwi relationships, partnerships and collaborative ideas and support from the Council is at an all-time high for Te Kaunihira o Te Tairāwhiti. We have previously discussed and debated there was no trust by iwi in local government for good reason. We are changing that perspective here in Te Tairāwhiti for all our whole community, and I feel privileged to be a small part of that change. I want to take a minute to commend all the amazing staff here at the Council who are making those operational changes and adjustments, upskilling around Māori responsiveness and Te Tiriti compass. Thank you. Thank you all for learning to be comfortable in a place that can often be uncomfortable.
Kia ora.
Your contributions to Te Whakarawara or recovery within Te Tairāwhiti goes far beyond a 3-year plan. You are our soldiers on the front line implementing transformational institutional change. Me mihi ka tika with much gratitude. Thank you so much. So I've said I'm in full support of this paper. Finally, I just have one question, so that we as councillors have a clear picture on how this bill could affect council staff. I want to ask the CE, as I'm sure she has considered it, what are some of the operational tasks which could be affected by the bill, and how do you believe it will affect staff working in those areas?
Your Worship, so essentially and we've seen in our community in terms of the sentiment that's been expressed, the bill will undermine our partnerships with our iwi and hapu, our working relationships, negatively impact on our future work programs. And I mentioned before, like the bill includes unsettled iwi, and so what that means is that while the bill protects those that have already been settled, those that haven't been through their treaty settlement process, it creates this degree of uncertainty that will be left for the council then to work out how do we recognise those iwi in terms of their rights in over particular areas, unlike we do with the Manuhiri, for example. We have a local leadership body that's been put through their settlement process, with Te Aitanga Mahaki that are unsettled. This bill creates a whole lot of uncertainty that's likely to be used on the council to try and navigate through. We don't want to be in a situation like that. What it also does is it complicates the decision-making process. It also compromises our policies that we've put in place. You've got a paper on the agenda, in fact you've got 2 of them on the agenda that are all shaped around our underpinning this is our relationship through Te Tiriti o Waitangi as the lens and the framework and our strategic direction. So it cuts to the core of what the council has been incrementally working towards in terms of its relationships with its treaty partners. So to think that it won't, if the council were not to make a stance in this space, then I think we all can see the potential ramifications of not doing so.
Thank you. Mr. Cranston.
Thank you. What is a treaty? A treaty is a contract between parties. by signing the treaty, all parties express an intention to comply. And we read in this, no engagement or consultation with Māori was undertaken. So it's destined to fail. It's destined to fail because it breaks down right at the very first step. You know, so, and there's no saving it. You know, you can't sort of say, well, we got it wrong at the start, but let's keep going. There's no saving it. It's destined to fail. And so it should, because of that fact that no engagement or consultation with Māori, the other party to this treaty, was not undertaken. So I'm fully in support of putting this submission in. I think there is education and learnings to be had around the treaty. You know, there's a lot of, I guess, ignorance, if you like, about the content of the treaty out there. And I think there's a process to be undertaken for education and upskilling on the treaty. But it's not going to be by way of a bill that's trying to get in there by tomorrow sort of thing. It's going to be right back at the start, engaging all parties to the treaty, and that is not happening at the moment, so I'm in support of this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm totally a similar vein, actually, after reading through this. Now, you know, we've got a coalition government. One part of the coalition wanted to put this bill forward. It was said by the rest of the government that would never go past second reading. And, you know, we've got a lot of angst that has been created from the bill to start with. The Prime Minister himself has actually said that he would prefer to have the treaty identified and discussed on a case-by-case basis with the original document. So, you know, when I read this, I just read that number 2 paragraph like Annie, no engagement or consultation with Maori was undertaken during the development of the bill, which can be seen as disregarding their role as treaty partners and the principles of Treaty o Waitangi. And that was in my end. So I totally support our role and what we're doing with our submission. And but I know that it's not going to go any further. I mean, you know, when they say it's not going to go past the next reading, we've got to, you know, I believe that. So, yeah. Thank you.
I can go standing orders. I'm not going to go standing orders because if people really want to say something, I want people to have the opportunity to say something. So we've already listened to 4 people in support. Anyone that want to speak against us making a submission? Councillor Telfer and then Councillor Elder.
Yeah, I'm not in favour of the council putting the submission forward because we're sitting here and we're having conversations around this table saying we're speaking for the community. We have not got the whole community's view on this. So how can we as council say we are talking for our whole community? So I'm not in favour of it.
Thank you. Councillor Elder.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question of Nadine, if you could explain point 8 of the Principles Act, which sort of specifies that in no way this treaty principle, sorry, page 30, is it? No, that's all right.
19.
Page 29,
Section 8.
section 8.
Yep, so
Which,
that,
yes, can you explain and how you can make your stand and yet that is in part of the Act, because I struggle with that.
yeah, so what through your worship, what I referred to in that, and so for those that don't know, that section is saying the Act not to apply to the interpretation of Treaty Settlement Act or settlement of a historical treaty claim. So what I was saying with those iwi that have already settled, so the Act provides for that, is those that have not unsettled. This means that those who have settled get legal rights over natural resources because they've already provided for, assuming in the those who have been left out do not. So then councils will struggle to fairly support them because there's no law that law if this bill goes into effect.
Is that an official interpretation of that? Because as I read it,
treaty
it
lawyer.
sort of sounded a bit like anything after 75 was still considered.
Under the treaty, any settled area, so when I'm talking about, so settled area, those that have claims under the Treaty of Waitangi, there are some that are still in negotiation, so not all iwi are settled. This does not apply to the unsettled.
Unsettled one. Okay, it's a little bit ambiguous then. Anyway, my next point's on page 21, and community engagement. And I've taken it upon myself to do my own engagement with people that I know that have voted for me, I believe they voted for me. And and the answers have been varied and conflicting and right through the spectrum. Some of them, most common, agreed that it's not an area that the council needs to or should be involved in. Many admitted to not having read the Principals Act, and I was enabled to tell them what page to look for. And my own opinion is it's a central government issue and we need to stick to core business. And it's for that reason I will be abstaining. Thank you.
You mean not abstaining, voting against?
No, I'm
Abstaining or voting?
Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. I am fully in support of this submission for this bill. Central government does a lot of things that we don't agree with. Since I've been here just only 5 years, I've seen several things that we've made submissions on because we are not happy with the way that the government has set it up, and also they have listened. So I have no doubt in the process, and it's really important that we put the views across. So that's me. Thank you.
Who else? Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Pakura-Guriwai.
Yeah, I watched the video the other day with Auckland Council having the same discussion, and I found it quite interesting. It was 10-all the vote, and then the chair had the deciding vote to say that they'd put in a submission. We've all got different backgrounds, knowledge and experiences, which determine our perception, views and opinions on things. For me personally, I'm against this bill. I see this bill as more government skullduggery, really. Yeah, so me personally, I'm against the bill. For anyone who supports it, I encourage them to educate themselves a bit more on the treaty before they form a strong opinion, to just educate themselves a bit more on the treaty. In saying that, I think this should reflect our community. I don't think it's right to say that all councillors support it, so I'd sort of suggest that we put in something saying these councillors support it, these councillors are against it, to better reflect the thoughts in the community, because although I support it, I'm also hearing people in the community who don't support it, so I think our submission should be a reflection of our community. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pakura-Guriwai and then Councillor Parata.
Tēnā tātou. I'm in support of our submission that's been prepared. I absolutely tautoko everything that's been said against the submission, against the bill. And tahi mei hinari said, kua tawhiti ke tō tātou haerenga mai, kia kore e haere tonu. He nui rawa a tātou mahi, kia kore e mahi tonu. We've come too far to not go further. We've done too much to not do more. And in the short time that we've been together around this table as councillors, we've done a hell of a lot of work in this space. Together around this table as councillors, but also with our iwi partners. I absolutely tautoko what Jean had said to us earlier. Partnership has not been happening in this discussion with central government. Māori are completely not there. And the discussions needed to happen with Māori from the very start. David Seymour does not have the monopoly on this discussion. And he cannot make changes to the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi without having that mana rangatira ki te rangatira discussion. He's not had that. The hikoi, massive hikoi, Poiarohe started in Pōtaka, came down here to Te Poho Rawiri. Hundreds of people turned up in opposition of this bill. Thousands, 100,000 turned up in Wellington, in Pōneke. I was one of those 100,000. Why? Because we absolutely vehemently oppose this bill. it's just wrong. In terms of your comment, Councillor Older, in regards to this just being central government business, we are here as local government because of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. You are here, people who choose to live here in this country are here because of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It gives us the ability to live here in Aotearoa together. So I absolutely support our submission that's been prepared, and I tautoko also Councillor Ria's commendation of our staff, of Jean and the team, of all of our senior leadership, of our CE, and all of the staff who have worked really hard to understand this space, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, in the context of local government. Our Tiriti o Waitangi campus is something to be really proud of, and we've all been learning about that and how we now see that reflected in all of our reports. We've got, as your worship said, we have some the papers that we have for discussion today, all hinge on that relationship with iwi, and also the atrocities that have happened in our future because of breaches of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It's our foundational document of Aotearoa. So, I support the motion as well. Tēnā koutou.
Councillor Parata and then Councillor Robinson.
Morena tātou, my apologies for lateness. Not everything we do here at council will be transformational, not everything. Some of it is run-of-the-mill mahi, and we could choose to do nothing, and then that would be on our names. And so I'm not fearful that the vote won't pass, because it seems like it will. But Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the foundational document of New Zealand. In New Zealand, Aotearoa is well known as being a leader in Indigenous rights, and Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the reason for that. To not stand behind it now would be to undo all of that good mahi. And I understand that there are pockets of this community and of this region that are fearful of what it means, but it hasn't meant anything bad for you so far, and it won't going forward. And just like everyone else has said, I'm actually grateful for the treaty principles built, because it brought us together in a way that nothing else has so far, from Pōtaka to Ranganui, Akiwa, and everywhere around the motu. People who have mostly stayed out of politics for themselves in this, and that will create much better democracy and much better participation going forward. But I'm proud of the Gisborne District Council for making a stand, because this mahi will have your name on it, and you'll be able to tell your iri and your descendants that you stood behind it when it really mattered. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Next, Councillor Robinson, and then Councillor Tifara, and then I will wrap it up for us. Have everyone spoken that wanted to speak? Cool.
So first up, to Nadine, thank you for the paper. It's a really well worded, very reasonable and accurate submission, and I completely support it. To my fellow councillors who have spoken in support of this submission, in support of the motion, thank you. You've all said aspects of what I wanted to say, but I particularly want to note Councillor Ria, who got all lawyery in her submissions and stole all my thunder. But if people, the reality is, in our community, in this community and all the communities around Aotearoa, people do not even have a basic understanding of Te Tiriti. They do not even understand, let alone understand our obligations to Te Tiriti under the Local Government Act. There are sections which Councillor Ria referred to, which clearly place an obligation upon us. Putting those obligations aside, look at our community. And look at the amazing mahi that we are doing and the commitment we have made as a council to bring us forward with our treaty partners. And it's the only way our community is going to succeed and our country is going to succeed. Okay, so there's no excuse for not for not opposing this, and there is no excuse for not having the conversations. And I just want to acknowledge too what Councillor Parata just said. Thank you for this bill, because it did unite and it has brought forward, and look at the increase in support for Māori, and hopefully it results in a whole lot more rangatahi signing on to the electoral roll and the demographics. This is a transformational stage in our country's history, for better or worse. And I want to be on the right side of the ledger along with the rest of you. Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou te whare, aka tūai ki te tautoko. I stand to support the paper and wish to thank the staff for the effort that has gone into it. I think it's very clear, although it's quite comprehensive, it's very clear where council should stand in terms of the movements of government. And whilst our focus is particularly on this bill, I want to also highlight that this is not necessarily just an ACT Party matter, but the actions taken by the coalition in the diminishment of the use of our reo, the dismissal of Māori advisory and Māori advocates in ministerial positions in government, and all the other acts that are happening that have been put into place that have been impacting on our Māori community in particular. Whilst the bill has focused a spotlight this side, there are many other things that this coalition government are doing across the nation to diminish the rights and the cultural situation of our people. And that's not mentioned in our recommendation. But I'm wanting to ensure that our community is aware of that. And our submission is very specific, our recommendation is very specific, and it should be. But there is a bigger picture that's happening in this country. And it's happening externally of council, but there are some matters internally for council should also consider, in my view. And because in our recommendation there, it talks about genuine conversation. And we need to have genuine conversations as council with our community. And I'd like to acknowledge what the staff has done in terms of making that happen. And I'm reminded back in 2002 when the Titirangi Accord was signed between council and Ngāti Unione. At that time, it was an act to identify that hapu also have a place to play. And whilst this issue here is centred around iwi specifically, hapu are also there. And so I want to stand to recognise that, and I want to acknowledge the work that council has been doing in terms of haputanga and its relationship into that space. And along that line, we have on the table today a report from about maraitaha, and that if we're having genuine conversations, we are ensure that those conversations are actually genuine. The Wainaki Pāmua Joint Committee and Jane Luton has put that discussion on the table, and that we have a responsibility to ensure that our reaction to that discussion is genuine. And we continue to do that. We did that with the yacht club.
Stick to the paper, please.
And that when we are looking at going outward, to also consider what we're doing inwardly so that we can hold our head up when we go out and do this sort of thing, that we're doing justice to this stuff, that we are enacting as we should internally if we're going to stand up and generate a voice outwardly to the government. And I think we should continue to do that, and I congratulate the staff on the efforts made. But reminding ourselves that we have a duty here, and based on the mana that we give Arohe, we can then go Mutu and ensure that mana is being upheld as well.
Okay, I'll tie a bow around this discussion, and I'll talk a little bit about Local Government New Zealand as well. So we, as Local Government New Zealand, sat down last week and had discussions exactly about this. Where's the role of councils? And they wholeheartedly support that councils go to their communities and talk to their communities. And like Councillor Alder said, I spoke to hundreds of people in regards to this. Hundreds and hundreds of people have spoken to me. And we can say some people in our community might not support us making a submission against this bill because they like the bill. Ka pai them, the bill is going ahead anyway. What we are saying is for our community who feel aggrieved by this and who are our partners in this community, we are standing with them and saying, we hear you, we see you, and we're standing next to you. So I understand that not everyone in the community feel the same, and that is okay. But as a council, if we are the council for everyone in this community, and half of our community are hurting because of this. We've seen the hikoi, we have seen the hurt cause. So I am proud that we are saying, hey, we've got your back. We are there with you, and we will, and to be honest, I thought our submission was really polite, saying, and I love this when we said in our second to last paragraph, if the government wishes to pursue a genuine conversation about existing constitutional arrangement, we advocate for a collaborative process that involves genuine partnership with iwi, hapu and Māori. And I thought that is what we're saying to the government. We don't mind to have discussions, but we can't have discussions if people are not at the table. And I think that is what our submission are saying is, let's have discussions, but the way we go about is not the way we want to do it, and we wouldn't be proud. If we did this in our region, we would not be proud of the way we conducted ourselves, and we know better, and we have grown a lot in this space. So what I say to people who don't like us making a submission, I can understand that we don't all feel the same, but we are the council for everyone in Tairāwhiti. And we proudly say, we stand beside you to say, let's have an honest discussion and let's make sure the voices that should be at the table are at the table. So without further ado,
Your Worship, can I do a reply?
I do the reply.
Thank you very much. I just did want to speak in regards to something that was, a statement that was made earlier around asking our community formally about our submission. We can't do that. As a council, we can't afford to do that. We make submissions to council or to central government so often and all the time. It's a cost of about 100k or mid to maybe 150k per asking our community. We need to understand that when we bring that up, like yes, it's easy to say, well, let's ask the community, but in terms of actual raw dollars, would we rather spend that money out in our community or going to ask them about something that actually we've got a general sense as to where our community's at in regards to this? We have a general sense. There are way more than 50% of our community that are aggrieved in regards to this bill. I was at the march. There were heaps of non-Māori that were at those marches in all of the parts of Aotearoa and in all of the corners of Aotearoa that then went on this march down to Wellington. Heaps of non-Māori. So this is not just a Māori issue. This is fundamentally a New Zealand issue. It's all of our issues. It's an Aotearoa issue. And that's the part that I want to end on. There's so much that we all have in common. There's so much that brings us together. Yes, there are differences in opinions and things like that, but there's so much that brings us all together in regards to fundamentally how we want to operate and the principles that we operate by, right? We want those things in our community. The way that we've been doing those things has been leading us to that space as a council. This bill would get in the way of us being able to do that meaningfully as a council in our region. You know, so I did just need to speak in regards to that. There's lots that we have more in common. Let's focus. Let's get this business stuff out of the way and focus on the things that bring us together. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by Councillor Ria. All in favour? Aye. Contrary?
Division, please.
Could I have an abstain vote?
One abstain, one person voting against. Telfer, all that, thank you.